Hello and a very good day everyone. So today we will learn on Power Query on how we can actually determine when a particular data have three consecutive increments. So for this case over here, for example, we do have a date and we do have the units. So if just say the units have three consecutive increment, that means it will be captured, it will be recorded. So how we will use Power Query to capture these three consecutive increment? So let's get started. So what I'll do is, the first step is I will highlight this data. So once I highlight the data, I will go to data ribbon. So I go to data ribbon and then I will go to from table slash range. So once I go from table slash range, you will notice that a box will appear. So by pressing OK, it will automatically go to Power Query Editor. So I press OK and then automatically it will go to Power Query Editor. So right now what I will do is I need to determine the three consecutive increment. So what I'll do is I will try to duplicate another three tables. So right click and duplicate, right click and duplicate one more time, and right click and duplicate for the last time, so that because we want to know the three consecutive increments, so that's why I have created three duplicate tables. And then what I'll do for the first table is, the first table what I'll do is I'll go to add column and I'll click index column. So index column, so that it will start with 0. So index column means the data will start from 0. Additional column will be created, like showing a sequence starting from 0. In the second table, what I'll do is, I will do the same thing. I'll click index column, but I won't click it over here. I'll just click on the arrow and I'll start from 1 because I want to create a sequence that beginnings from 1. And then I will do the same thing for the other two tables, but the slight difference is, instead of starting 0 or 1, this one, I'll click on this arrow, I'll click custom, and I want to start from number 2. Okay, I start from number 2 and the increment is 1, and then I press OK. So the previous one start from 0, start from 1, start from 2. So the table 1 or the bracket 4, this one I want to start from number 3. So I go to index column, the arrow over here, custom, and then starting index 3, increment 1. So you might be wondering why I want to create a duplicate column and why I created an index column. Okay, firstly, because I want to make a side-by-side comparison. By having a side-by-side comparison, I can determine whether there's an increment or reduction or whatnot. So what I'll do is I'll go to this table 1. I'll go to home. So under the home ribbon, as you can see over here, in this home ribbon, we do have merge query. So what I'll do is I'll click on merge query. So once I click merge query, a box will appear. So I want to merge this table 1 with this table 1, 2. So I click here, table 1, 2. So I can't able to press OK. So I need to click on the index and click it on the index. So the selection matches 13 of 14 because years start from 0, years start from 1. So I press OK. So now you notice an additional column will be created. I need to expand the table. I don't want to capture everything. So I unselect all. I just select the units and I press OK. So now it will show us the units. But the problem here, of course, the data is not sorted properly. So I need to sort this accordingly, sort in ascending. So now if you see, we do have a side-by-side comparison. I want to do again for another two tables so that I have a side-by-side comparison. So I will do the same step whereby I'll click on merge query. And once I click on merge query, a box will appear. So this time, just now I choose table 1, 2. This time I'll choose table 1, 3. So I will select the index and I will select this index over here and I'll press OK. And the same thing, I will expand the table. So I will just unselect all and select the units and press OK. So right now we will capture the data so that we have a side-by-side comparison. But the thing is, we want to know the three consecutive increment. So I will do one more last time. So I go to merge query and then after that I will go to table 1, 4. And then I will select the index because this is the common column, and then I press OK. And then what I'll do is I'll do the same thing. I will unselect all columns and select the units so that we do have a side-by-side comparison. So this data is not necessary. We can actually remove this. Okay. So right now we do have a side-by-side comparison because I want to know three consecutive increment. So like for example over here like 2207, 212, 214, 215. So 215 is three consecutive increment, and then 520. So like for over here we see 520 is reduced to 100, increase to 700, increase to 800, increase to 850. So the 850 is the third consecutive increment. So how we can do is we can do side by side comparison. Maybe we want to create an additional column where we do the subtraction or whatnot. So I will just select this column and press shift, select the second column. I go to add column, I go to standard, and I press subtract. So subtract means it will check whether the data is increased or decreased. So when I press subtract, so from here we can see the increment on the previous based on the previous period. So whether it's a increase or reduction, I'll do the same thing for the second column and the third column. So what I'll do is this table 1, 2 and table 1, 3, I'll go to standard, I'll go to subtract, and then what I'll do is, so of course we do have the side by side comparison, and I'll do the same thing as well. I will go to standard, and then okay, of course I need to highlight table 1, 3, table 1, 4, standard, subtract. And then what I'll do is, of course, we do have a side-by-side comparison. So what they want is actually the requirement is to determine three consecutive increment. So if there's three consecutive increment means the number should be positive. Because if there's a negative means, it means that there is a decline or there is a reduction. Like over here, there's negative, 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 negative. So whenever there's a negative means, it means there is no consecutive increment. We want to know three consecutive increment. So what we do is, of course, we don't want to know this null. So what I'll do is, I will click on this arrow box or auto filter and I will unselect null. So I'll just press OK. So now we do have the data. And then what I'll do is, I will select these three columns, the last three columns, press shift and select this. And then what I'll do is I'll go to transform and I'll go to merge column. So once I press merge column, a box will appear. So I want the separator to be an equal sign. You can choose any other delimiter, but I'll choose equal sign. And then I press OK. So now it has been combined into one column. But the thing is, I want to know if there is any negative over here. If there's any negative, it implies that there is no consecutive increment. I want three consecutive increment. So how to do that is, I'll select this column. I'll go to add column, conditional column. So you press conditional column, a box will appear. So what I'll do is, if the column name is merge, so if the merge column contains a negative sign, then it should show a status called no. Otherwise, it should be yes. So what I'll do is I'll press OK. So now if just say the merge column has a negative sign, then it should show no. Otherwise, it should show yes. So what I'll do is, okay, since we do have the status, so I only want to filter out whichever there is yes. That means there is no reduction or decline, and I just press OK. So once I press OK, so this is the data. Then I will select all this, and then I can press right click and remove columns so that we only have this particular data. I go to home. Of course, when you press close and load, it will load as a table in a new sheet. So what I want to do is, I want to close and load for all this as a connection. So I click this arrow, close and load to, and then you will notice a box will appear. So I'll press only create as connection. And then I press OK. So the queries and connection pane will appear over here. So somewhere over here, I'll put my active cell, and then I press right click. Once I press right click, I press load to, and then what I'll do is I want to load as table, and I press OK. So it will capture the data automatically. So for example, over here, if just say I put there's an additional data 24th October 2024. Okay, so we do have, just say we do have an additional data. So what I'll do is I will just drag this data over here. Okay, so I'll just put a random number like 100, 50, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, and then there's a reduction of 650, 50, and then 100. So from here, if just say I add new data, and can the new data determine the three consecutive increment? Well, when you press right click and you press refresh, it will automatically determine the three consecutive increment. Like for example, how we did capture 400? Because 50, it increased to 200. It increased to 300. it increased to 400. So over here, there are 3 consecutive increments. And then the same thing happens for 500, 600 and 700. So we can use Power Query actually to determine that if there's any 3 consecutive increment.